for Milk. You had me, I was just mesmerized there in the front row. That was so amazing. Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Drath. I'm one of the committee members for this event. I am a MILCK fan, and I am just so thrilled to get to just talk with you a little bit. And I know I speak on behalf of everyone, like we've said. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you. That was amazing. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes, I don't think my mic is working. But I can maybe use this one. Let's see. Oh, that one works.
Oh my gosh,
Okay, we're gonna. Oh, you want to swap?
Yeah,
why don't you sit at the
should
piano?
I be behind the piano? Okay, I won't touch it.
Thank you for the kind words, Amanda. Appreciate it.
No, of course, well deserved. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of dive right in.
Let's do it.
So you spoke a lot about your storytelling and writing music. When did you start writing music? Was it always a passion for you when you were young, or is it something that you kind of found later in life?
I started writing songs when I was 14. That crucial, like, passionate teenager time.
Yes.
But I was writing like piano songs when I was like 7 and 8. I was starting to compose, and I was really lucky because I had, man, it makes such a difference when there's like one person in our lives that pours into us. And so her name is Mrs. Mendenhall. She's since passed. She was my piano teacher, and she noticed that I was writing melodies, and so she taught me how to write them down. And yeah, she's the best.
She's always a teacher, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Woo, teachers!
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, I want to go back to Quiet a little bit. So obviously we've talked a lot about it. Of course, we spoke about how you sang it a cappella. You sang it with this choir of women at the Women's March. What drove you to perform it that way at the Women's March? You said you didn't really know these women. You kind of rehearsed with them over Skype. How did that all come about?
That's a great question. So I have this instinct sometimes where I don't want to just participate in things. I want to offer something. And so I knew I was gonna go to the Women's March. I saw this Facebook event. Like, none of us really knew what it was gonna be. It just popped up as like, do you want to join a bunch of women and express dissent? I was like, yes. Buy my ticket now. And I actually bought an extra. I was like a broke musician. I don't know why I did this, but I bought 2 airline tickets because I was going to bring a friend. And I had grown up singing in choir, and I think being a survivor of abuse, in harmony, like human harmony hitting the body is so healing. And so I joined a lot of choirs, and I learned how to harmonize. And harmony is a really beautiful way of practicing trust, because it's like, I have to trust that I'm going to be able to sing my own note, and I have to trust that the other person's going to sing their note, and we're going to do this. We're going to create something beautiful together. And that was the beginning of me learning how to interact with others in a safe container of trust. And when I thought, I want to share this song at the Women's March, I thought that because when I watched the election happen, and when I listened to the derogatory language that was expressed about women during that election campaign, I felt this particular type of rage. And it was the same rage that I felt when I was writing and releasing the song Quiet, like out of me, not releasing into the world, but when I was writing it, I was like, oh, those are very similar feelings, maybe they're related. And so I thought, maybe I'll share this, but I don't want to pass out CDs, you know, and not many people listen to CDs anymore. Some people do, but if it's just me on guitar, that's kind of cool, but what about if we sang in harmony and just washed people with like this frequency of just hope and love and, you know, divine feminine rage. And so I was trying to recruit people in Los Angeles to fly with me, and I don't think people understood what it was going to be, so nobody's committed. So I was like,
They
okay,
regret that.
Yeah.
You could have been.
So I cold emailed a bunch of choirs based out in DC. and lo and behold, the GW called Sirens.
GW.
Yes, GW. Yes. Mm-hmm. Shout out. I purposely. The GW Sirens, and then this other group of amazing mothers who continued singing in harmony together decided to join in, and so it was this beautiful mix of like young college students and like mothers who like have raised children who like wanted to sing the song, and so I decided like let's do it, and it was the coolest experience because we didn't know each other, and then we started singing the song in harmony together, and we just all started crying, and then of course we, as women do, we formed a circle, and then we shared stories. And the last woman who shared her story said, "I'm here singing because I don't want my daughter to have to sing the same song." And we all felt this like weight and this like importance to it. And so the next day when we were at the march, we just were like, let's like give people love and just, you know, spread good vibes, and as a form of gratitude for everybody showing up.
It's amazing, and it was such a powerful performance. If anyone has not seen it, you've got to look it up. It is fabulous. And I will just say, there's something so amazing about women coming together and expressing rage, right? Like what you talked about, because it's so oppressed.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
particularly with women, but with anyone with kind of a marginalized identity, it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that performance really, as you said, it changed your life. It kind of thrust you into the spotlight, not just of the Women's March, but then also kind of the broader Me Too movement. How has being put into that spotlight influenced you since then? I feel like it must be a burden and a privilege a little bit.
That's a great question. I want to like scooch back to what you're talking about, the rage thing. I learned something this past month. I was having a conversation with a man who's of big stature, and he was sharing with me that he also cannot express rage because if he does, it's really scary for people. So I have empathy for different types of people who are expected to not express certain things to make other people feel more comfortable. So it's like a really I don't know, it's a very nuanced thing, the expectations we put on each other. I have a lot of empathy for that because I do think that some of the issues that emerge and like rise out of domestic violence is some of the expectations of male domination and those things.
Right.
Like we're all in this like soup of toxic culture that we're just trying to figure out. But anyway, so I just want to back up
Everyone's put
and
into this
acknowledge
box,
that.
right?
Yes.
And you have to kind of conform.
Absolutely, yeah. And then with the journey of Quiet going viral and being put into these spaces, how it affected me, I actually started to, it was crazy because I would sing for activists, like on the ground, literally on the streets, we would perform, and then I was invited to, meet Hillary Clinton or Oprah, and so I was all in I was seeing a whole range of different social classes and seeing how these issues are all the same and we're all trying to come at them from different angles, and so it's given me a holistic view of how we can all work together, and it's also given me because now I know that I'm not alone and there's so many of us who are concerned about the same things. It's also like made me reflect on my identity as a Chinese woman as well, because I didn't quite realize what the visual would look like, and I've had feedback from other Asian people saying seeing an Asian person sing at the top of her lungs and she can't keep quiet is quite cathartic. And for me, it like I think it's important. I'm grateful for, it made me like prioritize authenticity and to never hold my authenticity back in my expressions, because I never know like what gift or what thing it's gonna give me, because it's coming through me. I feel like I'm channeling the songs.
Right.
And so sometimes the songs teach me lessons and they help me become a better person. So my job is to constantly get out of the way of truth and to always serve that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I feel like in the past when I've read some interviews of you,
Researcher.
She does her homework.
Respect.
You have been really open about growing up, obviously, as a first generation Chinese American woman and kind of being taught to observe more than to speak. And so do you feel like through your music now, especially after Quiet and the reaction that it's gotten, that that's really kind of changing for you and that you've found your voice in a more powerful way?
I like to say that I'm uncovering my voice because I think all of us have that voice. It just gets covered up by societal expectations. And I think I'm continuously uncovering the different traumas that I've had as a woman of color, and finding ways to creatively and playfully and joyfully, mischievously take back my power. Especially with everything that's happened with a lot of the AAPI hate and stuff that's going on. My Asian sister friends, and I have a fund called the Somebody's Beloved Fund, and one of the beneficiaries is the Asian Women's Shelter in San Francisco. They do incredible work for domestic violence survivors as well. And there is a revolution happening right now on the ground. I can feel it with my friends, my Asian women friends, where we're looking at each other and being like, I know we're lucky and I know I'm grateful, but also F this, you know, like
yes,
also,
great.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, and I think that's why I'm starting to talk about it more because that constraint is doing nobody good.
Mm-hmm.
I trust that we will find productive ways to channel our rage. We just have to understand it first. And so I want anyone who's been oppressed, like outside of gender, to be able to like healthily access that so that we can have revolutions.
Yes. Yes is my answer to that. I'm just like agreeing with everything you said. That's amazing, and it's amazing that you have that fund. I know I wanted to ask you about, you've obviously been described as not just a singer-songwriter, but also an activist. I know we talked about maybe advocate. You like that word better?
Yeah, I do.
But, you know, of course, Quiet has become this anthem for survivors of sexual assault and abuse, but your song, Somebody's Beloved, honors Black lives lost due to systemic racism. I guess, how has your music kind of played a role in your role as an advocate?
I'm so glad you brought that song up because that song is so important to me. It's called Somebody's Beloved, and it was inspired by Breonna Taylor and Tamika Palmer, her mother, and all the Black activists who are paving the way. Like, you know, for me as an Asian immigrant, I would not have been able to immigrate here if not for Black activism. And so, and that is something that a lot of my Asian peers and my like ancestors don't know. And so I'm trying to educate, and because during the time of pandemic, I started seeing that I am part of the problem without even intentionally being a part of it. I am. Some of my ambitions of wanting to succeed in this world, to prove to my immigrant parents that they made the right choice, I'm making them proud, I'm gonna work really hard, I'm gonna climb all the ladders, I'm gonna succeed. But why am I doing that, and what is happening when I climb ladders that oppress people? So Somebody's Beloved was a song for me to practice speaking out when I was so deathly afraid to, because I was like, I'm not involved in this. I'm not like, I don't want to speak for a movement that I'm still learning about. However, I realize that's also my Asian American perfectionism and wanting to not rustle feathers, like that was showing up. So I teamed up with some of my Black co-writers, and we wrote together so that we could have conversations and learn. And then I decided to take on the Somebody's Beloved Fund, which has 10 grassroots organizations of Black and Asian. There's most of it is focused on like healing Black lives. The organizations are incredible, like Black Emotional and Mental Health Organization. They're a beautiful collective. And then there's Asian Women's Shelter, and then there's this organization in Wisconsin that works on South Asian and Black solidarity, and it's incredible. And they're called Freedom Inc. And I learn from them tremendously, and I'm fiercely focused on using my music to, when you said like activist versus advocate, I am an advocate because I'm spending most of my time writing art to help direct attention and resources towards these activists who are doing the work on the ground. That's how I see it, because I very much revere the title activist. So I feel like my role is advocate for now. I might evolve, but for now I feel good about those words. Yeah.
And it's amazing that you use your platform and your art to do that, because like you said, I can imagine that it's hard to once you're put in this position where you're kind of the face of something. It's like, what do you speak out on? What should you speak out on? That kind of, are people gonna be mad if you say something or if you don't, etc. So that's amazing that you get to use your platform like that, and I really admire that about you.
Thanks, and that's a good point, because I'm always scared, and it brings up my perfectionism. It brings up like, am I going to say something wrong? But I think at this point, I know it's like so scary to say things right now. I acknowledge that, and I'd rather try to say things, or sometimes I know to not say anything and just learn and listen. Like I was like maybe I should write a song. Like I also can keep quiet when I need to.
Quiet part too.
Things that I'm trying to learn. But for somebody's beloved, like that platform, I want it to be creative. I want it to be curious, because there's so much guilt and shame involved with what is going on in our world. And guilt and shame are these emotions that if they stay in our body for too long, it actually destructs. But what are constructive and creative emotions? Curiosity, hope, love, and so this fund is a place to invite people who are curious about how can I be involved in helping others that don't look like me or from different environments. I'm learning too. I have my blind spots, but I'm like, let's just go. And it's great because I'm healing my perfectionism through it, right? So there is self-serving to the serving. Yeah.
Oh, and it's amazing because it's so important that, people who are not in, it's not your issue, quote unquote, like you need other people to step in. Like nothing's a women's issue. We need men to step in too. Nothing's just a black issue. We need Asian Americans, we need white people, we need everybody to care, because that's how real change happens. My last question for you, just what advice do you have to anyone out there, survivors, women, non-binary, anybody who feels like they can't or they don't have a right to speak up about anything? Broad question.
I think that I would say it's something that you actually were talking about in a conversation we had earlier, to not validate that thought, but to normalize it. It is understandable that we feel like we don't have the right to speak up. And so perhaps we can ask the questions why. I find that the most fascinating and inspiring people that I've ever met have one gift in common, and it's asking questions, asking creative, curious, and different questions. I feel like questions are the key to a rich and dimensional life. And I say that because I have been someone who's been shy and been afraid to ask questions for so much of my life that that is my new art form, is questions, and so I think if we're afraid to speak, then maybe start with questions.
Wow. That's amazing advice. Awesome. Thank you so much. MILCK, everybody.